Thank you, everyone. Good evening. I would like to welcome the Mayor, all members, and our guest to the Old Town Hall, Stratford. I would like to welcome the members and public and press who are physically attending or watching on YouTube. The meeting is being filmed for broadcast on YouTube. Please note that the cameras are focused on everyone within the meeting. I would like to take this opportunity to remind the public that to enable the Council to conduct its business, if there are any interruptions at today's meeting, I will ask the individual or individuals to stop and give a warning. If this continues, I will give a second and final warning. Should the disruption continue, I will ask security to remove the person or group from the Council chamber and will adjourn the meeting. Members of the Council, please can I ask that you indicate when you wish to speak by raising your physical hand. I would like to advise members in order to comply with the allocated time for the speakers. If you go beyond your allocated time, you will be automatically muted. Please can I ask members and officers to introduce themselves when speaking. I would like to ask that everyone turns their mobile phones to the silent mode. Will Council please note I have accepted an additional report as a matter of urgency, attendance of meetings, authority of exempt, which is outlined on your supplementary agenda. This item will be considered the item 16, after item 16. We are not expecting a fire drill this evening, so if the alarm sounds, please remain calm and follow the instruction of the Town Hall staff. The fire assembly points are by the Western Lane. I'm now moving to item 1, apologies for absence. I have received apologies for absence for this evening meeting from our Chief Executive Abi Bago, who will be represented by Conrad Hall, Corporate Director of Resources. Apologies from Councillors Caroline Ajaja, Mariam Daud, Mohammed Ghani, Susan Master, Pushpa Makona, Carlin McCullin, John Morris. Jenny, is there any other apologies you'd like to update, please?
Apologies for John Morris, Susan Masters, Jane Lofthouse, Pushpa Makwana, Charlene McLean, Terence Paul, Lester Hudson, Salim Patel, Caroline Adaja, Anthony McCalmont, Mumtaz Khan, and Mariam Dawood. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor Jenny Benny. Councillor Danny Killing.
Apologies from Councillor Arik Chowdhury.
Thank you. Councillor Mahmoud Mirza.
Madam Chair, apologies from Councillor Zubair Ghulam Hussain.
Thank you, Councillor Mahmoud Mirza. Is there any other apologies to be recorded? No? Thank you very much. I'm now moving to item 2, declaration of interest. Are there any members wishing to declare any disclosable pecuniary interest or any other interest they may have in any matter which is to be considered at this meeting? No? Thank you. I'm now moving to item 3, minutes of the last meeting. I move the minutes of the last meeting of Budget Council held on the 27th of February 2025. Do I have a second, please? Thank you, Councillor Imam Haq. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Thank you. All those against, please raise your hands. Any abstention? Thank you. Agree the minutes. I'm now moving to item 4, deputation. That I can confirm the chamber that there will be no deputation under Rules 9 of Part 4 of the Constitution, so I'll move to the next item. I'm now moving to item 5, petition. Are there any petition by any members to wish to submit? Councillor Rachel Tripp.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Liz Cronin and I wish to submit this petition from residents of Brooking Road and Moore Walk, asking for residents-only parking in the car park in that area.
Thank you, Councillor Rachel Tripp. Councillor Nate Higgins.
Thank you, Chair. Just Councillor Nate Higgins, Stratford Olympic Park Ward. Just notifying Council that there's an ongoing petition from residents at Legacy Tower on Great Eastern Road outside Stratford Station, calling for the pedestrian walkway there to be reopened during the construction that's happening there. And that will be brought to Council when that's finished. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Larissa.
Council Larissa Jelitska, Green Street East Ward. I have a petition from residents of Green Street Ward.
Thank you, Councillor Larissa. Thank you. As stated in our Constitution, the petition will be referred to the relevant corporate director for their attention and responses acknowledging the petition and setting out how the matter will be dealt with will be sent to the councillors within 10 working days. Thank you. I'm now moving to item 6, questions by the public. There are 3 questions from members of the public accepted under the Rule 10 of Part of 4 of the Constitution. Question 1 and 2, along with the responses, are attached on the supplementary agenda published earlier today. Question 3 is from Ben Lambert. In accordance with Rule 11.7, Jess Smith has been nominated to ask the question on his behalf. Jess Smith, please ask the questions.
Thank you. Hi. In February, my 3-year-old was injured in a hit and run while crossing Balmoral Road on the way home from nursery. This was reported to Newham Council, the police and my local MP. In 2022, Newham proposed a low-traffic neighbourhood for the Woodgrange and Capel area, including closing Balmoral Road Bridge to through traffic. Council data showed over 5,000 cars a day using Balmoral Road, with 40% as cut-through traffic. And speed surveys found over a quarter of drivers exceeding 20 miles an hour. The council's own data said that it was essential to reduce traffic on these streets for all users, particularly children. But despite this, the consultation was stopped without explanation, and no alternative road safety measures have been introduced. Over 550 residents have signed a petition calling for the council to accelerate plans for the Woodgrange low traffic neighbourhood. When will the council provide a timetable for revisiting this?
Thank you. I now invite Councillor Sarah Ruiz to respond, please.
Councillor Sarah Ruiz, Statutory Deputy Mayor, Lead Member for Environment and Sustainable Transport and Children and Education. Naturally, we were concerned following the news of the incident involving your young child, alongside the worry and anxiety that this incident has caused. Like all, we are thankful and relieved that your child was not seriously injured, but we appreciate that this will rightly focus people's attention on how we make our roads safe and tackle the issue of dangerous driving by reckless drivers, mopeds, motorbike riders and cyclists on our streets. The Council is deeply committed to reducing road danger and rat running, traffic from local residential streets, and providing a safer environment for walking and cycling. Reducing the volume of through traffic on residential roads leads to a lower risk of collisions and an environment that elevates the health, well-being and happiness of our residents, as well as their safety. Our Just Transition Plan sets out our intention to develop a network of low-traffic neighbourhoods targeting 80% coverage of LTNs within Newham and 90% of all trips to be undertaken by walking, cycling and public transport. Our ability to deliver this is dependent on funding from Transport for London, from whom we are awaiting confirmation on the outcome of our latest bid. The Wood Grange and Capel LTN feasibility study and initial design proposal was funded from the Council's Levelling Up Fund. The award was from 21 to 23. The traffic data included the traffic data included in it was captured from January to September 22. At that time, the speed limit was 30. Since then, the Council has delivered a borough-wide 20-mile-an-hour project, which has been implemented in this area. This is assisting in reducing speed and road danger. It is, however, important to acknowledge that the Council does not have the power to enforce speed limits or dangerous or reckless driving, as this is a police matter. In light of the petitions received during the non-statutory consultation period on the Wood Grange and Capel LTN proposals, 1,326 petitioners, and the lower than expected participation in the initial perception survey, 110 responses, the Council recognises that further engagement was needed. Using better methods drawing on experience from the development of the West Ham Park LTN, TL funding will be required to deliver this. Newham Council acknowledges this further petition and recognises that there are a variety of views about the prospect of an LTN in this area. We will take account of all feedback from members of the public, both this petition and issues highlighted in the initial non-statutory consultation, in reviewing the proposals and taking forward further consultation when the funding is available.
Thank you, Councillor Sarahs. Jess, I would like to express my regret at what happened to your son, and I hope he's fully recovered. And thank you so much for being with us this evening. Thank you. That concludes this item, and I will move to the next item. I'm now moving to item 7, announcement by Chair, myself. Public engagement. I would like to inform Council that I have attended around 8 public engagement in my role as a first citizen of the borough, both inside and outside of the borough. This includes a number of Newham citizenship ceremonies held at Newham Town Hall, where I have been delighted to welcome new citizens to our borough. On behalf of Council, I offer our congratulations to my Deputy Chair, Councillor Imam Haq, and his wife on the birth of their son, Afzan Imam Haq, a few weeks ago. Bangladesh Independence Day, there will be a flag-raising event held at Newham Town Hall, East Town, on 26th of March to celebrate Bangladesh Independence Day. I wish everyone happy Bangladesh Independence Day. Holi, I send my belated wishes to those members of our communities who has last weekend celebrated the Hindu festival of colors, Holi. Eid, I take this opportunity to extend my warmest wishes to all those observing the holy month of Ramadan, and hope that you and your loved ones enjoy the festivities of Eid al-Fitr at the end of the month. So Eid Mubarak to everyone in advance. I'm now moving to item 8, announcement by the Mayor Ruxana Fiaz. I invite Mayor Ruxana Fiaz to address the Council to make any announcement you may have. You have up to 10 minutes.
Thank you very much, Chair. Evening, colleagues and friends and members of the public. I hope that all of you now have a spring in your step as the milder weather kicks in. And as a reminder, the clocks are going forward this Mothering Sunday to mark the start of British summertime. This morning, I headed over to Bowling Wood to take part in this year's Great British Spring Clean Litter Pick with volunteers mobilised to work within their communities to keep Newham clean. The work that we are doing is making a difference and having an impact. Over recent weeks, our public realm teams at the Council have won the Team of the Year 2025 at the Keep Britain Tidy Annual Awards, And that is a testament to the power of focus and great leadership of Alid Richards, the Corporate Director of Environment and Sustainable Transport. Unfortunately and sadly, he'll be leaving Newham Council at the end of this month, and we will miss him. But I wanted to take a moment to thank Alid publicly at tonight's full council and to wish him the best for his future cleaning and transport adventures. As a parting gift, I would like to read out an email that I received from a local resident from Stratford this past Friday evening. As a resident of Newham for over 40 years, I just wanted to give the Mayor and team a compliment. Over the last year, I've seen road pavement cleaning all hours of the day, and Stratford has never looked so clean. I just thought, as a resident, you would like to hear this. Well done, Newham Council. So, on behalf of the Cabinet, the Executive, and everyone at Newham Council, thank you, Alid. We've made huge strides in tackling litter and fly tipping under his leadership. As mentioned, I was so proud that our public realm team won a National Keep Britain Tidy Award for street cleanliness last month. We know that there's more to do to tackle the minority who continue to litter and fly tip. But it is also important to recognise the team's success in reducing fly tipping by 11% this past year so far, an achievement that reflects their hard work and dedication and the leadership of Alid. Looking ahead, next week marks the 60th anniversary of the first meeting of Newham Council, a milestone that invites us to reflect on how far we've come as a borough and as a community. It's also a milestone that invites us to look to the future. Newham is a borough with huge potential, powered by the ambition, creativity and determination of its people. As we celebrate this 60th anniversary from the 1st of April, we renew our commitment to ensure that our borough continues to be a place where everyone can thrive and be welcomed. Over the past 6 decades, Newham has transformed into a dynamic and diverse borough, grown very fast, enriched by the cultures, traditions and contributions of its residents, pretty much a city in its own right. As a borough, our history has always been rooted in its diversity, inclusivity and movement. It is diverse, and its diversity is enriched by the various flows of migration that have fueled this borough's innovation, growth and progress. And as a council, we remain committed to celebrating our diversity and combating discrimination and hatred wherever it may be found. On that note, we are honoured to welcome Sundar Katwala, Director of British Futures, here tonight. Back in 2022, I outlined the importance of undertaking a commission focused on belonging and inclusion, and the importance of how we as a council need to adapt to our hyperdiversity. And this evening, you'll be hearing from Sundar about what he will be doing under his stewardship as the independent chair of the commission. And it is really important that at this time, in this period of history, during this moment in our country's present and future, in light of the toxic activities and narratives that are shaping people's perceptions of the other, examples of the riots that were raging across the country, we here in Newham can show the rest of the country, the rest of the world indeed, that how and why we lead the way in strengthening cohesion and belonging. So I trust all of you colleagues will give Sundar a rich welcome when he comes to the stage. And on that note, colleagues, I just will conclude. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Mayor Roxana Fiers. I'm now moving to item 9, updates from Cabinet members. Any members of the Cabinet who wish to update Council will be allowed to speak. There shall be no debate or questions allowed. Does any member of the Cabinet wish to speak? Thank you. You will be allowed to speak up to 3 minutes. Councillor Neil Wilson. Councillor John Wentworth. You are Councillor Neil Wilson, yes.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. And as this is a public meeting and this council administration believes in transparency, I've already delivered this to those members who attended a member briefing, but as this is an opportunity for us to share very briefly that the CQC, that's the Care Quality Commission, have notified Newham they will be inspecting how we are fulfilling our care duties and our responsibilities under the Care Act. This will happen within the next 7 months. We've had a notification that inspection processes for the councils across England is new. Newham hasn't been through this particular framework, and the presentation I gave to members did highlight what CQC will be inspecting. I think because this is an open meeting, I'm just going to say what the aim of the assessment is from an independent evaluation. The CQC assessment from their own website says that they're inspecting us, and we welcome outside inspection. I think that's an important part of our duties under the Act, is to understand the quality of care in a local area or system and provide independent assurance to the public of the quality of care in their area. And it's to shine a light on adult social care, identifying local good practice and sharing this nationally. It's got a sharp focus on frontline practice. The teams in the Adult Social Care Directorate are going through a whole load of preparation. We had to send off a self-assessment with a lot of lines of inquiry. And it's important, I think, that the 4 themes are highlighted here. The statements, what the local authority should do, and the I statements. The we statements are what the authority should do. The we is the experience of the residents. They will be looking for interviews with myself, with the Chief Executive, with the Chair of the relevant Scrutiny Commission, our partners, but most of all, and most importantly, the users of our services, their carers and people involved in the service delivery. There's 4 themes: working with people, how we assess their needs, the supporting people to live healthier lives, which is in our commitment as a council, and equity in experience and outcomes. It is important to stress that that is a very important theme for this council, which is not just about care provision, integration, community, and providing support, but working in partnership with others. And I couldn't end this brief bit by saying, of course, there's an emphasis on safe systems, pathways and transitions, but an important lens on safeguarding. I sit on the Adult Safeguarding Board together with the Director of Adult Social Care, but they will be interviewing the independent chair of that body who reports to the Health and Wellbeing Board, which is another independent body and has already reported to scrutiny. And the final theme is governance, management and sustainability. I think it's important, and I'll end because I know Councillor Whitworth has got an update as well, to say that we are never complacent. We can always learn from outside evaluation.
Thank you, Councillor Nielsen. Thank you. Does any other members wish to speak? Councillor John Wentworth. You have up to 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor John Whitworth, Cabinet Member for Air Quality and Climate Emergency. Last Thursday, I attended the launch of Community Energy Newham's share offer. This was also attended by the Mayor, a few other councillors, quite a few members of the public, and community energy enthusiasts from various parts of London. The origin of this project lies with Repowering London, who are a not-for-profit organisation who borrow capital to install solar energy panels on buildings in various parts of London, and I believe further afield. And almost a year ago, the council gave them a contract to install solar panels in Newham on 3 libraries and 4 schools, and to prospect other possibilities. And this was a result of a study they'd done the year previously. They also seed community benefit societies to take on the what they install. And this is Community Energy Newham, which they gather together volunteers who create this society, and this society is opening up with a share officer, so residents of Newham and other people can become members of this community benefit society and help to buy the solar panels from Repowering London. So this is the model, so that these solar panels will gradually be bought by the society, which is the members of the public here in Newham. And this is, and many people know about this, but in case anybody doesn't, if you're a Newham resident, you can buy shares for as little as £50. And if you can't buy any, you can join the society, become a member, and have voting rights for just £1. Because this is a democratically run society. It's one of the benefits of it is it's democratically run and owned. It produces clean renewable energy. It is able to bypass multinational companies in a limited way, of course, but producing energy that is a little cheaper. And we hope this is going to be a way forward, because the more local people can run their energy and own it, and the less we depend on the multinationals, the better, and it will be cheaper, and people will have a role in controlling their own future.
Thank you, Councillor John
The
Wentworth.
council, therefore, is very happy.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor John Wentworth. I'm now moving to item 10, announcement by the Chief Executive. I invite Conrad Holt, Corporate Director of Resources, on behalf of the Chief Executive to make any announcements.
Thank you, Chair. I'm pleased to announce that Newham have 2 teams shortlisted for the Local Government Chronicle Awards. Firstly, we have the Climate Action and Highways Sustainable Transport team in the Net Zero category. And secondly, Newham, in partnership with the University of East London, for the Public-Private Partnership category, for establishing the UK Centre for Artificial Intelligence in the public sector with the University of East London. That's the shortlisting. The winners will be announced in June, but we can wish them luck. And could I also congratulate our Libraries team, who have been nominated in the Library of the Year category in the British Book Award. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I'm now moving to item 11, overview and scrutiny program and future commissions. I believe Councillor McClement is not here to update us from the page 37 on the published agenda. On behalf of him, of course, Councillor Lakmanisha will be updating. You have up to 5 minutes to represent your report.
Chair, the report is as published. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Councillor Lakmanisha? No, thank you. I'm now moving to item 12, update from Newham Partners. For our partners update this evening, I'm pleased to welcome Sondra Katwala of British Futures, who will address Council on the work of the Commission for the Future of Belongings of Inclusion in Newham. Good evening, Sondra Katwala. You have up to 5 minutes, after which members will have up to 10 minutes to ask any questions that they may have. Thank you.
Thanks very much, and thanks for the invitation to be here. Today I will be chairing the Commission on Inclusion and Belonging in Multi-Ethnic Newham that the Mayor decided, as you know, should take place and consider the challenges of inclusion and belonging in Newham. I'll just tell you a little bit about me personally. I was born in this country half a century ago now to parents who came from India and Ireland, met through the National Health Service, and for the last sort of quarter century I've been working in think tanks policy. I ran the Fabian Society for a while. I've been running a charity and think tank called British Future, which is about how we have confidence in an inclusive, welcoming identity that can unite us in the kind of diverse society we are. So I'm very excited to be embarking on this work with you in Newham. I think this issue of inclusion and belonging, it's important we get it right everywhere, how we live together in an increasingly diverse society. We saw that in the way we were tested by the pandemic 5 years ago. We very much saw that in last summer's riots around the country. And I think in the last year and a half, we've seen how global conflict affects community relations here in our cities too. But how Newham gets this right obviously matters to the work you're all doing to govern and represent Newham, but I think it's important for the rest of the country too to think about how you get this right. You're right at the heart, you're right at the forward edge, I think, of one of the great challenges of our times, because you're the most diverse, you're the fastest changing borough in a capital city that is one of the fastest changing cities everywhere. So you're at the forward edge. I think, in Newham's 6 decades, probably it's 30 years since people were debating, is diversity happening or not? It's a fact, it's a reality in the everyday life of Newham, but you're at the forward edge of how we get that right, how our capital city as a whole is already a city without a majority group. We've all got to be part of the everybody that we're talking about with inclusion and belonging. So I think those challenges, how we recognise and respect difference, how we handle change fairly when change feels fast, how we bring people together. What you do here, I think you can be a leader of thought and practice, but it's tough to be the place of the fastest change anywhere, to be a place that is dealing with fast change when there's riches and wealth nearby as well, but there's also more deprivation. So our commission will have to grapple with all of that. We've had a really positive experience of inviting residents of Newham to be on the commission. We've been interviewing. Catherine Fitzgerald on the council staff has been helping us run a really good process. We were interviewing by age range. So we've got somebody from the 1824 group, somebody from the over 60s group, somebody to represent those of us in between as well. And we're also bringing together people with professional experience in academia, in business, in civic society, to make up the group of 10 people that will undertake this. We'll start with listening and engagement. So, we'll build the mayor will meet the group when it meets the first time next month. We'll be talking about why it matters and the different experiences we bring. We'll then be engaging with people, the public, stakeholders. We'll want your help, I think, on how we reach the people that it might be harder to hear from, as well as those who will be keenest to be heard from. And then later on, we'll come back in the autumn and tell you what we've been hearing about the opportunities of change, about the pressures of change. We'll be making our recommendations. How can the council, build on what it's doing to be inclusive in the way it delivers service? Who else in Newham, in the schools, in culture, in business, should be playing a part in inclusion and belonging? What can citizens do? So that's the challenge we face, I think, to hear, to engage, to reflect back, and then hopefully to offer some practical ideas about how to make useful forward progress, in challenging times. So thank you very much for the invitation to do this, and I look forward to hearing your questions too.
Thank you. Thank you. Are there any questions from members to Sandra Katwala? Councillor Sabia Kamali?
Thank you for that. How does your approach to fostering inclusion and belonging differ from the current council strategy, particularly in addressing the impact of ethnicity, faith, and other protective characteristics? Where do you believe the council has failed and fallen short in genuinely engaging with residents and stakeholders? What specific gaps exist in its current approach to tackling hate and discrimination, and what bold, tangible action should be taken to ensure real accountability and lasting change takes place?
Thanks. I hope by the time we've done the work, we'll be able to answer all of your questions about what's gone right, what's gone wrong, what needs to change. I think we'll obviously build on what's already happened. I think one of the reasons the Council has embarked on this comes out of the LGA Corporate Peer Challenge to say, we know Newham has got a lot of experience here, we know it's important, but you should also elevate its prominence. You should also reflect, I think, that the pace of change speeds up, that the economy, international events are making this tougher. So I don't have an answer as to what would we critique, what would we support, but we are engaging with the data, we're engaging with the council officers, we're engaging with people outside the council to build the evidence. But I think at the end of this discussion engagement phase, we'll have a better balance of what's going right, what needs to change, and then we'll have the challenge of making the kinds of recommendations to the different actors that can bring about change. It might be the council, it might be the police, it might be other actors that need to do what you're saying, which is make people really feel that inclusion and belonging is very central, and that it's obviously an important issue in a place like this, but people want to see that priority recognised and reflected in impactful things that make a difference.
Thank you. I look forward to your report. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Sabir Kamali. I'll invite Councillor John Gray to ask his questions.
Yeah, Councillor John Gray, West Ham Ward, and thank you for a really, really good presentation on an important subject. My question regarding inclusivity is regarding social economic class, which now, of course, the new Labour government is going to introduce a duty on local authorities to actually take steps to tackle social economic class. And again, as was mentioned before, about those disgraceful riots that took place last year. As somebody from a working class background, I was ashamed that members of my class were acting in such a way. And it's very easy just to shout racist at them. Calling somebody a racist doesn't stop them being a racist. You have to be able to deal with the arguments. You have to address the underlying economic issues behind. Racists have always used unemployment, bad housing, poverty as an excuse to discriminate. So, of course, also for black, disabled women, due to intersectionality, they suffer the most as well from inequalities in social economic class. And for a borough like Newham, where there are huge differences in wealth, I welcome your thoughts on what work you can do to address this important issue. Thank you.
Thanks. I think it's a very well-made point. I think in Newham you're well beyond this idea that inclusion is about minorities joining something else. It's an everybody issue. But I think you're exactly right that when people play a kind of competing grievances game, do you care about ethnic diversity, or do you care about gender, or do you care about social class? To get it right, it's a majority experience. Being from a minority or non-white background is a majority experience in Newham. But all of these things affect everybody, so we've got to integrate those points. I think we're hearing about a backlash against inclusion. We don't live, thankfully, in Donald Trump's America. We don't want that kind of backlash. But it's a chance to say, if we're going to get this right here, we've got to reflect, the intersectionality, the experience of class and belonging. There's a white working class, there's an Asian and black working class. There are shared interests there. There are attempts to divide those interests as well. So I think we've got to reflect that in the way we hear from people. You've got the opportunities of economic change, and that people feel left out of those opportunities as well.
Well, thank you for your time with us, Sandra Katwala. Is there any you'd like to ask a question?
If I may, I've got two questions. Sunda, what is it that we can be doing as elected representatives to help support the engagement with the work of the Commission, yourself and other commissioners? And perhaps you could kindly just provide a bit more of an overview around the approach the Commission is going to be taking. And then my final question was in relation to issues of intersectionality and how you anticipate that being addressed in a place that in so many different ways and with so much richness and depth, is a genuine melting pot of a borough of wonderful people demonstrating the brilliance of connected communities, but also in these ominous times, how we hold people together during times of challenge and crisis, and what are some emerging thoughts in your mind that will help frame the conversations that you're looking at having, including those difficult conversations?
Thank you. Yes, on the practical point, we'll start with an open survey. We'll also start with engagement. You know, we'll also get out in the streets. We've got some support as well from students and master students to help us do this. We'll have a call for evidence for those who are civic stakeholders and have expertise at that level. We'll be trying to hear, you know, from individuals as well. I think councillors can help by, you know, hosting something yourselves, giving us your information, call of evidence, holding things, you know, at the hyper-local level that you can do, encouraging people to do it. So we'll share that information so you can do that. I think the intersectionality challenge is obviously absolutely central to this, and it's about how we link up with the other work that you're doing on fairness. We don't try to fix everything to fix something, but we've got to be cognizant of all of those issues and how they interrelate in order to make useful recommendations. So, you know, I don't want to give too much of my view, because I want the commissioners that we recruit to come to a view together about what this means now. But I think the way in which those issues intersect is something our group will bring a lot of lived experience and professional experience to, and hopefully we can come up with a way of talking about that makes this an everybody issue, not an issue for specific groups and specific people.
Thank you. Are there any other members who wish to ask any questions? No. In that note, thank you for your time with us, Sonda Katwala. We know that you are extremely busy, and we appreciate giving your time. Thank you. I'm now moving to item 13, members' questions under Rule 12 of Part of 4 of the Constitution. I can inform that Chamber that there is 4 questions received and accepted by the Chief Executive. The questions with the published responses can be seen on the order paper published earlier today. The questions are from Councillor Shantu Ferdous, Nate Higgins, Joshua Garfield, and Danny Killing. Questions 1, I call upon Councillor Shantu Ferdous to ask your questions, please.
Good evening, Chair, and good evening to you all. I'm Shantu Ferdous, Councillor for East Ham. My question to Councillor Sarah Rees: we must acknowledge that Newham Council has improved our SCND service over the last few years. However, SCND children in Newham still need further specialist and inclusion schools and a way to fill the gap of SCND specialist professionals. How do you plan to address and resolve these issues given the current financial difficulties?
I call upon Councillor Sarah Rees, Deputy Mayor and Cabinet Member of the Environment, Sustainable Transport, Children's Services and Education to respond. God, it's a long title. Respond to the questions. Councillor Sarah Rees, thank you.
Thank you, Sarah Rees.
Thank you, Councillor Ferdous. No, I don't think so she does. I believe that you don't have any supplementary question, Councillor Ferdous. No, thank you. Question 2, I call upon Councillor Nate Higgins to ask your questions, please.
Thank you, Chair. In August 2023, Green councillors in Stratford Olympic Park objected to the expansion of the East Village controlled parking zone, expanding to cover newly adopted roads in Chobham Manor, instead arguing for a bespoke controlled parking zone for the area. This objection was based on fears of increased traffic in the neighbourhood, due to expanded access to the area's parking spots and was sent after a local consultation by councillors showed overwhelming opposition from residents. Councillors cited the council's relevant rules, which state that CPZ boundaries should not be introduced without the support of local councillors and the local community. Councillors have received no formal response to this objection, and there's been no public communication. There are indications that the expansion is going ahead, and the private enforcement of parking in the area appears to have abruptly ended, causing chaos for residents. Can the Cabinet member clarify the position on controlled parking in Chobham Manor?
Thank you. I invite Councillor Saris to respond. Thank you. Do you have a supplementary questions, Councillor Higgins?
I do, Chair. Thank you. The Mayor promised residents in a meeting on October 22 to consider including Chobham Manor in its own controlled parking zone due to the risk of increased traffic long before the consultation on instead expanding East Village's parking zone in August 2023. You've had over a year and a half since that consultation, during which time apparently nothing has happened. It simply doesn't track to claim the reason for not doing this is because it would take another consultation. You've had more than enough time for this. In this time, I've had emails ignored, follow-ups from meetings failing to be actioned, and promised meetings not taking place. Nothing in this answer is new information since my meeting with an officer in autumn 2024. Why has it taken almost 2 years since the road's adoption in April 2023 to put parking controls in, leaving PCM illegally operating in the meantime?
Thank you. Councillor Saris, do you wish to respond?
Thank you. Personally, I do believe that you had a full briefing response this morning from Aled, and because I did and you were copied in. So if I've seen it, you've seen it. I'm just saying that that was sent this morning to your to the parking issue. All right, not in response to your question. Okay, it was sent this morning. Pardon? Yeah, I'm talking about something that was sent this morning, so you had further information. But I'm going to read out the response as I have been asked to. Thank you for your inquiry regarding the expansion of East Village controlled parking zone into the newly adopted roads in Chobham Manor. Our parking policy, specifically section 3.3.2, states that where there will be significant amendments to existing RPZs or IPZs, such as changes to operational hours or boundaries, these rightly should not be introduced without the support of local councillors and the local community, based on consultation outcomes. In this instance, the roads in question were recently adopted and fall within the geographical extent of the existing East Village CPZ. As such, the introduction of the EV permit holder bays and pay-by-phone bays is considered an appropriate approach and a necessary extension, and consequently not being significant amendment requiring a new scheme and therefore a section 3.3.2 consultation. Nonetheless, a consultation process for these changes was undertaken, with 9 representations received. 8 of these were from residents and 1 was from a councillor, representing approximately 1% of the local population. Implementing a new separate CPZ proposal, which was not originally consulted on, would require restarting the entire process, including a fresh consultation. This would result in significant delays, leaving these roads without any parking controls for an extended period, potentially worsening parking pressures for residents. Chobham Manor comprises of over 800 properties, all of which would be competing for only 106 parking spaces, excluding private roads and car parks, with 26 spaces not available for adoption. A separate CPZ would create unintended challenges, including displacement issues and further reducing available parking for some residents. Given these considerations, the Council believes that proceeding with the current proposals is the most practical and effective approach in managing parking demand in the area. To ensure that the CPZ continues to serve the best interests of residents, we will actively monitor its impact following implementation. If evidence demonstrates that a separate CPZ is required to address significant issues, we will consider appropriate adjustments in the future, including undertaking a Section 3.3.2 consultation if required.
Thank you, Councillor Sarah Ruiz. Sorry.
Chair, I have a lot of respect for Councillor Sarah Ruiz, but she's just read out the answer to my original question rather than answering my supplementary question, which I'm entitled to and which remains unanswered. The supplementary question was, why has it taken almost 2 years since the road's adoption in April 2023 to put parking controls in, leaving PCM illegally operating in the meantime? That was the supplementary question, so the original answer doesn't answer that question.
She mentioned as tabled. So would you like to respond, Councillor Sarah Ruiz?
I'm sorry, but I thought I had responded by saying to you that you had an email this morning from... Can I finish? From Tracy Patel, explaining why it had taken what we were going to do and why the roads they were not our roads. If you want a further response to your question, then I will get it answered, but I wasn't the cabinet lead then, and I only picked this up this week.
So is that agreed that she will provide you further response to you? Thank you, Councillor Sarah Ruiz. I call upon Councillor Joshua Gutfeld for his questions.
Thank you, Chair. Usually I'd say it's tabled, but as has become customary, I shall read out the question, I suppose. Given the growing concerns that many residents have been in touch with me about regarding Meridian Square, a vital public thoroughfare connecting Stratford Station, the bus terminal, and the shopping centre, used by residents and visitors daily, could the Cabinet Member for Community Safety update us on the multi-agency enforcement strategy being developed with the British Transport Police, the Metropolitan Police, and relevant outreach services that target the vulnerable? The square has sadly become blighted by urban encampments, excessive litter, discarded paraphernalia, substance misuse, aggressive solicitation, and harassment from unauthorised street preachers and charity collectors. This has created an unwelcoming and often intimidating environment for the thousands who pass through daily, while risking an exacerbation of the historic rodent infestation.
Thank you. I call upon Councillor Amar Bardi, the Cabinet Member for Housing Needs, Homelessness and Private Rental Sector, and Cabinet Member for the Community Safety and Crime, to respond.
Thank you, Chair. I was about to introduce myself, you just did it for me. But Councillor Amaverdi, Green Street West, Cabinet Member for Housing Needs, Homelessness, Private Rental Sector, and Cabinet Member for Community Safety and Crime. Thank you for the question, Councillor Garfield. Just to start off with, Meridian Square and the environments is an area which is subject to ongoing police and control patrols. Partnership problem solving and CC monitoring is obviously an extremely busy area of the borough, with Stratford Station alone being one of the busiest stations in the UK, with 54.3 passenger entries and exits into or around the Meridian Square. The vast majority of people using the Meridian Square on a daily basis do so without an issue, like myself earlier today. But we recognise that the level of the footfall in Stratford benefits from does sadly attract a high level of crime in ASB, which is something we work hard to mitigate on a continual basis. ASB reported to the council has, however, reduced by 90% compared to last year, even though we are aware of other forms of ASB remaining high in other wards. Stratford benefits from a dedicated police town centre team, as well as a highly regarded Stratford Safer Business Partnership, which brings together a wide range of partners, including enforcement agencies as well as local businesses, and working with council services, including adults and health, children's services and other partners as well. This draws on the expertise of the Safer Business Network, which operates across many London boroughs and helps to share essential intelligence and to problem-solve challenges affecting the local area. The council and the police work closely together, particularly as part of a recently introduced new integrated community enforcement model known as NICE. As an example, a recent operation in the area during the festive months, Operation Zakuza, led to 55 arrests, 149 stop and searches, and multiple seizures of weapons and drugs. As well as tackling crimes and those engaged in antisocial activity, the council also looks to reduce rough sleeping in the area by working with various outreach providers, for example CGL, and voluntary sector organisations. By taking a trauma-informed approach, we hope to encourage individuals, not also but without a home, to come off the street whilst also providing advice and support regarding other issues they may be experiencing. We are aware of the encampment in Meridian Square and are working on how this can be addressed while supporting those involved. I know, for full disclosure as well, working with adults and health, there are rough sleeping counts, and obviously those that have gone out with Councillor Neil Wilson and others will be aware of how much outreach goes into supporting those that are rough sleepers, which is not an easy challenge to fix. Recognising the importance of physical build and the environment to public safety and the perceptions of safety, the council and wider partners are looking to additional measures in and around the Meridian Square where funding allows. This includes the use of mobile CCTV cameras, which are known as nomad cameras. Newham Council is also continuing to work strategically with other organisations to secure funding to invest and redevelop the area. As you're aware, Councillor, the Stratford Station saw completion of a new and improved entrance with further investment to ensure the nearby multi-billion pound 28-acre Carpenter's estate. As a local authority, we are absolutely committed to improve public safety, ensuring that residents benefit from new community facilities and vital transport and infrastructure, which improves the area. Keeping Meridian Square clean, which obviously Councillor Rees will be aware of, is something we endeavour to do with our street cleansing operatives present and around the location every other day. These operatives are responsible for manual sweeping, litter picking and emptying street litter bins. This work is supplemented by scheduled and more intensive deep cleaning, including the washing of litter bins and mechanical swimming of hard surfaces. However, not all responsibility is down to the council. Obviously, a lot of this lies to the TfL, as you're aware, and other partners who are responsible for keeping upkeep and obviously maintaining security as partners of Westwood as well. We're working closely with TfL to ensure these works are completed in a required standard, and the council itself also dispatches cleansing crews to perform deep cleans of the square, wherever is required on an ad hoc basis. And furthermore, with this Labour government at the helm, we are pleased to announce that the new crime and policing bill, which has come into place, which instills the tackle on knives and blades, and also the introduction of the respect orders. Also pleased to see the 3,000 officers commitment and PCSOs and special constables which have been deployed in the area, which hope we have to see a benefit from. Just to further add, obviously I just came through Stratford and Stratford Olympic Park to give that reassurance of what I've seen in terms of transformation. But I'm sure there's supplementary, so I'll add more after that. Just to give that
Thank you, Councillor Amar Bharti. Councillor Joshua Garford, do you have a supplementary questions?
Indeed I do, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Verdi, for your response. Despite a length that would make Tolstoy blush, I do worry that not all of the question was answered, but I'll be in touch separately about that. I'm particularly keen to receive a reassurance, I suppose, that any proposed solutions to the long-term neglect of Meridian Square, including a possible public spaces protection order, would actually be implemented, unlike the unfortunate situation on Romford Road, where a police-supported public spaces protection order designed to tackle criminal activity was scrapped at the 11th hour. That left local communities without the protections they were promised. And I would really hate to see a repetition of the same issue occur in Stratford.
Thank you. Councillor Amarbardi, do you wish to respond?
Thank you, Councillor. As you're aware, we only recently refreshed our PSPO commitment on alcohol and noise nuisance and on dog nuisances as well. So those are actual active PSPOs that went to wider consultation. In regards to other PSPO your references, that's obviously a different situation. And we worked on a sex worker strategy with colleagues and partnerships, which has put us in a much better place. That decision was made by all colleagues and members in terms of the public health approach we're taking. And actually we've seen plaudits from wider partners, the GLA, MOPAC, and the Met direction on that. So, and just to further add, just to give further reassurances to not just members of Stratford and Stratford Olympic Park, but to all members here. I was in a meeting just earlier on today with the LDC Westfield around what more needs to be done around Stratford and the commitment around to create a safe area. And further, to give you reassurances, I've got a meeting with, and a live walkabout with the CEO of MOPAC, just to present the case of Newham and how much more support it needs. So if that is more reassuring for you in terms of what we are trying to do, and as a lead member with our organisation and statutory partners, I hope that helps you. Thank you. And I'll get back to you on any other comments.
Thank you, Councillor Marbardi. Question 4, I call upon Councillor Danny Killings to ask your questions, please.
Preventing overdoses can be as easy as administering naloxone. Currently, CGL, which Change Grow Live, train and give these kits out free of charge as a rollout and prevention. Chemsex is a popular activity primarily between gay men, and the use of GHB and methamphetamine to enhance the experience. This is a high risk of an overdose. Would our health and adult social care team work with our sexual health partners in rolling out naloxone to be given out to service users? I would also like to thank the Democratic Services team for trying to make me say gamma hydroxybate.
I call upon Councillor Neil Wilson, Cabinet Member for Health and Adult Social Care, to respond to the question, please.
Thank you very much for your question. I will assure everybody that I'm not going to get into this trap of reading out some words that I would find difficult to pronounce. But the important thing is to say that the current evidence is that naloxone is only effective when someone has taken opioids. There's no evidence at the moment, and obviously science, particularly in the whole area of pharmaceutical research, is continuing to develop. But there's no evidence of harm in using it if they have overdose or something else, for instance, chemsex drugs. But it won't reverse the overdose in the way it does with opioids. It's also important to remember the effects of this reversal are temporary, and so it's not a one-all fix. No pun intended, so it doesn't fix everything in one go. However, there are common elements of responding to any suspected overdose rather than focusing solely on naloxone. And this is something that is part of a training package, which I'm pleased to say that Change Grow Live as our partners in the Substance Misuse Service to Newham's health and social care staff. The more we can make our staff aware within both social care and health, as well as similar organisations, and particularly the important voluntary community and faith sector, who do have very good contacts with some people, sadly, who don't trust or have stigmatisation around these very issues. The training offer can be extended further, and we would welcome suggestions. That's why I'm making a big point of this, Chair, because so often it's a standard response, and I think you've raised a really important issue on how we can talk about things that sometimes, when I first came onto this council, you couldn't even use the three-letter word sex. Now I'm at the dispatch board talking about chemsex. I think it's important to say that there's overdose management advice on our website, and the emergency and naloxone information is there. Naloxone is available to those picking up needle exchange equipment in our pharmacies in Newham. I want to pay tribute to the very work of pharmacists, and long may they continue and not be taken over. Well, some company called Boots has been taken over, I don't know how many times, but I suppose I just name-dropped that one. The important thing is that CGL distributes naloxone to service users with needs of over 1,000 to date already, and the offer rate in Newham is well above national average, so I'm pleased on that. Throughout, and there's been 2 reports to Cabinet, Newham has moved a long way on its sexual health services. We've still got a long way to go, though, to make certain that questions like you've raised are actually brought to the notice of the public. The last bullet point on page 11 of the supplementary agenda does highlight that the Specialist Sexual Health Service has a dedicated clinic for residents reporting issues related to chemsex and other psychosexual health problems. And just to also say that we are part of a multi-stakeholder working group across North East London, and that looks at it with the Office for Health Improvement and Disparities. There is so much that we need to talk about, not just in terms of men who have sex with men, but also heterosexual transmission amongst Black African communities. And as I was on a meeting this morning with the partners in North East London Integrated Care Partnership, we don't want to actually be in a society that is run by a president who says that he is not going to have services across the very vulnerable communities across the world who travel. And we are in one of the most diverse but also welcoming boroughs, regardless of where people are, their sexual histories and what they're facing. So thanks very much for the question.
Thank you, Councillor Neil Wilson. Councillor Jenny Kaling, do you have a supplementary question?
I do, but I believe it was pretty much covered in the original answer to the question. And I did give my supplementary in advance. That is probably why. My supplementary was, can naloxone be rolled out to staff, councillors and our community safety team to ensure lives could be saved? But I believe Councillor Wilson has answered that. Thank you.
Thank you. I now move to item 14, Statement of Licensing Policy. The report is outlined from the page 61 on the published agenda. I call up on Councillor Amar Bardi to move the report. Councillor Amar Bardi, you have up to 5 minutes.
Chair, I'm going to probably be a bit less and then invite Councillor Tony Wilson to speak. Councillor Amaverdi, just want to formally introduce the review of the Borough's Statement Licensing Policy. This is the 6th revised version of the Newham Council's licensing policy undertaken to comply with the requirements placed on us as a licensing authority by the Licensing Act 2003 and strongly supports our corporate plan priority for building a safer Newham. This policy has been prepared to assist the licensing authority in reaching a decision on applications setting out those matters that would normally be taken into account. It seeks to provide information for applicants, residents, businesses in the borough and the responsible authorities of the licensing expectations. I think I'll leave it there. And I'll invite Councillor Wilson to add. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Tony Wilson. I am the Chair of the Licensing Committee. Section 5 of the Licensing Act 2003 requires the authority to publish a statement of licensing policy every 5 years. The current policy came into force on the 1st of March 2020 and expired 30th of April 2025. The 2025 and to 2030 policy has been completely rewritten to produce a constructive and modern day policy, which is aspirational and sets a constructive tone. The policy includes new features. The policy is clearer and precise and is now an easier document to navigate your way through. The new statement licensing policy recognises the fundamental rights that women should live without fear. Newham are committed to tackling violence against women and girls, and we strive to foster an environment amongst our licensed premises borough-wide. We're also looking at Terrorism Protection of Premises Bill, which will soon become legislation. It is also known as Martin's Law. Many of our larger venues will or have already adopted this policy independently, but this is a bill that we wish to push further once it's legislated. Agent of Change principle covers how new developments can be integrated effectively with existing businesses and community facilities, specifically in relation to the objective on the prevention of public nuisance, which we've heard quite a bit about today in this meeting. Because this borough is so diverse, many of the SME businesses are owned or run by ethnic minority individuals where English is not necessarily their first language. We have made this policy much clearer in both content and layout. We have now introduced a translation panel produced by the Language Shop, which I believe covers the majority of the languages spoken in Newham. Ed King, the licensing team and other regulated authorities, including the Home Office and Immigration, have worked extremely hard on producing this statement of licensing policy, and on behalf of myself and the committee, we thank you. I support the adoption of the reviewed licensing statement. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Tony Wilson. Do I have a seconder, please? Thank you. Oh, sorry, she was a seconder. Sorry, I was combining presenting the reports. My apology. We now move to the debate. Does any member wish to speak? No. In that case, can we now move to the recommendation, which are outlined on the page 62 on the published agenda? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Thank you. All those against, please raise your hands. Any abstentions? No, thank you. The report has been approved. Thank you. I now move to item 15, appointment of a mayor assistant. The report is outlined from page 191 on the published agenda. As chair, I move this item. Do I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Hawk. We now move to the debate. Does any member wish to speak? No. In that case, can we now move to the recommendation which are outlined on the page 191 on the published agenda? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Thank you. All those against, please raise your hands. Any abstentions? No. Thank you. The report has been approved. I now move to the item 16, attendance at the meeting, authority of exempt. The report is outlined from the page 201 on the published agenda. As chair, I move this item. Do I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Amar. Thank you. We now move to the debate. Does any members wish to speak? No. Can we now move to the recommendations, which are outlined on the page 201 on the published agenda? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Thank you. All those against, please raise your hands. Any abstentions? Thank you. The report has been approved. I now move to the item 16A, accepted as a matter of urgency attendance at meetings, authority to exempt. The report is outlined on your supplementary agenda. As chair, I move this item. Do I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Islam. We now move to the debate. Does any members wish to speak? In that case, we now move to the recommendation which are outlined on the supplementary agenda. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Thank you. All those against, please raise your hands. Any abstentions? Thank you. The report has been approved. I now moving to item 17, member statements. In accordance with the Part 4 Rules of Procedures of the Council's Constitution, paragraph 13, there were no requests for statement made by members. Thank you. I'll now move to the next item. The page ordering in the hard copy is incorrect. If members could refer the published version online. Thank you. I'm now moving to item 18, motions. There are two listed for consideration of this meeting, namely enhancing public confidence through mandatory biannual DBS checks for councillors, expanding land use licensing to Stratford Olympic Park and Royal Victoria, We have received amendments for both motions from Councillor Anamul Islam for motion 1 and from Councillor John Gray for motion 2. I will remind members of the Council procedures rules. I call upon, where's the procedures rules? Sure. I call upon Councillor Mahmood Mirza to propose his motion, which is outlined from the pages 206 on the published agenda. Councillor Mahmood Mirza, you have up to 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, Chair, officers, fellow councillors, member of the public, and especially those who are watching us on a live stream on YouTube. I stand here today to propose a motion that speaks to the heart of the public trust, safeguarding and responsibilities as elected representatives. This motion called for the introduction of disclosure and barring services check for all councillors, a step that is long overdue in ensuring we uphold the highest standard of integrity and accountability. As councillors, we regularly engage with residents, including children, elderly residents, and adults at risk. Whatever we are advocating on behalf of a vulnerable resident, attending community meetings, or visiting local schools and care homes, we are placed in a position of trust. That trust should not be assumed. It should be demonstrable and verifiable. Currently, many professions that involve interaction with vulnerable individuals, teachers, social workers, healthcare staff, are required to undergo DBS checks as safeguard against harm. Yet, there is no universal requirement for counsellors to do the same, despite the nature of our roles. This is a clear gap in safeguarding procedures, one that could put residents at unnecessary risk. Chair, this is not about the bureaucracy or making life difficult for elected members. It is about ensuring that we, as leaders of community, led by example, several councils across the UK have already adopted policies requiring DBS checks for their councillors. Recognizing the public confidence in local government is built on trust, transparency, proactive safeguarding measures. Chair, by passing this motion, the Council will commit to introducing DBS checks for all councillors upon election and ensuring they are renewed at appropriate intervals throughout their terms. Mandating enhanced DBS checks for councillors in roles that involve direct work with vulnerable people, such as those serving on adoption and fostering panels. Number 3, lobbying the UK government and local government association, LGA, to introduce legislation making DBS checks mandatory for all councillors across England and Wales. Number 4, ensuring all councillors to receive appropriate safeguarding training, reinforcing our responsibility in protecting the most vulnerable members of our community. Number 5, developing a clear policy on how any concern arising from DBS disclosures will be managed and ensuring a fair and proportionate approach. Number 6, engaging with residents and community organizing to promote confidence in safeguarding measures undertaken by this Council. Madam Chair, by taking this step, Newham Council will not only align itself with the best practice seen in other sectors, but also set a gold standard for safeguarding the local government, within the local government. This is not just a protocol. This is not just a procedural change. Chair, it's a statement for our values. It tells our residents that we are committed to protecting them, ensuring their trust, and maintaining the highest standard of public services. I urge my colleagues across the chamber To support this motion, let us do the right thing, not just for ourselves, but for the people we serve. Safeguarding is not an optional, and the trust is not an automatic. It must be earned and must be protected. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Mahmoud Mirza. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Sufia Dagbi, you have up to 3 minutes.
Thank you. I second this motion that every councillor should be subject to a DBS check. And I do so with firm belief that this is necessary and long overdue step toward ensuring greater transparency, trust, accountability in local government. As councillors, we are not just decision makers. We are public servants. We represent residents from all walks of life, including children, vulnerable adults, and those who rely on us to protect their best interest. In many cases, we attend schools, community centres, care homes, youth projects, places where safeguarding must be paramount. Let me be clear, calling for DBS checks is not about questioning the integrity of anyone in this room. It is about setting a consistent standard. It's about recognising that in public experts and deserves to know that people elected to represent them have been vetted to the same degree as those who work in roles of trust and care. Teachers, foster carers, youth workers, even school volunteers all must undergo DBS checks. Shouldn't we, as elected representatives, hold ourselves to the same standard, if not a higher one? Introducing compulsory DBS checks sends a powerful message. It says, we are committed to safeguarding. We take our responsibilities seriously. We are prepared to be held to account. It's also about restoring and reinforcing public trust. In recent years, public confidence in politics has been shaken. By supporting this motion, we show our communities that we are not afraid of scrutiny. In fact, we welcome it. So once again, I urge all the members here today to support this motion, not because we have something to hide, but because we don't. Let's do the right thing. Let's lead by example, and let's ensure that our council reflects the values of safety, integrity, and accountability that our residents rightly expect from us. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sufia Naqvi. Please note that we have received an amendment to this motion, which is outlined on the supplementary agenda. I call on Councillor Anamul Islam. Please present your amendments. You have up to 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Anam Islam, Forest Gate South. Chair, I move this amendment on behalf of the Labour Group to strengthen safeguarding through clarity, legality and proportionality. The original motion calls for a biannual enhanced DBS check for all councillors regardless of their role. While the intent may be sincere, the approach is flawed legally, financially and practically. Chair, our amendment is targeted. Councillors with statutory safeguarding duties, such as cabinet members for children's or adult services, will undergo enhanced DBS check with the council covering the costs. Other councillors may opt in voluntarily for a standard DBS check if they wish, respecting transparency without creating waste or risk. Some say this means paying to serve. It doesn't. No one is forced to pay. No one is excluded. It's about choice, not a council-imposed mandate. And if a group wants to fund those checks, their political group, if they want to fund those checks, that's their choice, not a legal duty. Chair, let's not forget the legal implication on this matter. Sorry, just give me one moment. Just cite some. All right. Legal implication. The Offenders Rehabilitation Act 1974 protects people from being forced to disclose spent conviction. The GDPR prevents us from demanding sensitive personal data without lawful grounds. And let's not ignore the impact on female and minoritized councillors who may already face disproportionate scrutiny. Blanket DBS checks could become a barrier, not a safeguard. And crucially, councillors are not employees of the council. We're elected office holders, not regulated staff. Safeguarding law applies differently, and we must avoid confusing employment-based compliance with elected responsibilities. Chair, we must not allow safeguarding to become a political tool. As Lady Hill reminded us, the rule of law requires clarity, not confusion, necessity, not noise. Chair, the words of JFK, the enemy of the truth is often not the lie, but myth, persuasive, persistent, and unrealistic. Chair, our amendment offers a review by the monitoring officer to identify roles where DBS checks are legally necessary, enhanced safeguarding training for all our councillors, engagement with the LGA to align policy with national guidance. Chair, we're not opposing safeguarding, we're getting it right. This is an amendment that's legally sound, ethically fair, publicly defensible. I urge colleagues to support it. Chair, I move. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Namul Islam. Is there a seconder for the amendment? Councillor Sarah Ruiz.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Islam. I'm only going to add that obviously those of us who hold statutory positions, like Councillor Wilson and myself, do have an enhanced DBS check. Many of us in this room who are school governors also have a DBS check. Many of us in this room who are, through their employment, have a DBS check. So it's not as if we are not checked, but actually, you know, it should be a choice. It isn't a legal requirement. And I think that we need to look at this really carefully and not set hairs running. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sarah Ruiz. Councillor Mahmoud Mirza, as the mover of the original motion, do you accept the amendment?
No, Chair, I don't accept this amendment.
Thank you. We now move to the debate on the amendment. Members, you have up to 3 minutes each. Councillor Joshua Garfield. Councillor Higgins.
Thanks, Chair. Newham Greens will be opposing Labour's amendment. The original motion is clear. It recognises that councillors, all councillors, hold public trust. We meet residents at our surgeries, at schools, at community centres. We're invited into people's lives and often into sensitive, vulnerable situations. This is not just about safeguarding law, it's about safeguarding trust. Labour's amendment weakens the motion significantly. It scraps the universal enhanced DBS requirement and replaces it with a patchwork approach. Mandatory checks for only some councillors and voluntary checks at personal expense for everyone else. We know that this patchwork process will create gaps in which those aiming to evade exposure will be able to hide. And it's not just watering down, it's actively unfair. Expecting individual councillors to fund their own DBS checks puts those with fewer resources in an impossible position. If you can't afford to pay for it yourself, you're left vulnerable to public attacks for not doing so, with people inevitably asking, what are they trying to hide? No councillor should be forced to choose between financial pressure and reputational risk. And let's be honest, if we want the public to trust us, this can't be voluntary. A voluntary check is not a safeguard. It creates a two-tier council where some councillors can say, I've been checked, and others are left exposed, whether or not they have anything to hide. Hackney Council understood this. After a Labour councillor there was convicted of possessing indecent images of children, they implemented mandatory checks for everyone, unanimously. Labour councillors in Hackney supported that then. Why is Newham Labour trying to water this down now? The original motion included a funded process. Labour claim there are legal doubts, but we know from Hackney that it's legal and within the council's powers. It treats all councillors equally, and it sends a clear message to residents. We take safeguarding seriously. Let's not fudge it. Let's not force individual councillors to carry the cost, financially or politically, of doing the right thing. This isn't partisan, but it is dangerous. It's playing with fire. I urge Labour to withdraw this misguided amendment. If they won't withdraw it, I urge every councillor to vote it down. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nate Higgins. Councillor Joshua Galford.
Thank you, Chair. I perhaps have a query, and I wonder if that's a query best placed with the monitoring officer, because I do hate to have time in this council chamber wasted. I don't think, and correct me if I'm wrong, that local authorities independently, all 400 of them in the country, have the power to determine who can and can't stand for office and to create or to remove additional barriers to entry to office, and that in fact that would be a decision for central government to make. At the moment, to be elected to any office in this country, or to most offices, all but a police and crime commissioner office in this country, a criminal conviction is not it doesn't bar one from standing for office. Even if a sitting member of parliament is found guilty of a criminal conviction, there is a threshold for which that would trigger a recall petition. Again, another step to remove somebody with said conviction. I'm not advocating for people with convictions to stand for office. I have an enhanced DBS check. I used to be a youth worker. I used to lead the education portfolio. Many here do. Political parties may decide to include it as a requisite politically for their group candidates. But I do wonder whether or not the motion passes or falls, with or without the amendment, would we have the power to add such a requirement for anybody wishing to be a candidate or to be a councillor?
Thank you, Councillor Joshua Garfield. Are there any other members who wish to speak? No. Before we move to the vote on the amendment, Councillor Mirza, as the proposer of the original motion, you have the right of the last reply. Do you wish to say anything further? You have up to 3 minutes.
Chair, I don't have any such thing to say, but the amendment is, just to put an amendment in the motion, it's lost its purpose. You know, if it's not mandatory, there's no need for it. I mean, some of the councillors want to do it, some don't want to do it. So I think it loses the, you know, the essence of the motion. It's for, we wanted to ensure and made an example to our residents that we are clean people, we are people who can you know, serve you, and we will engage with you. And there are positions we go in where the vulnerable people we need to engage with. And I think this amendment is just a flawed, just to put the motion, it loses essence in there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, I'm coming on to that, please.
Chair, I believe my colleagues on the other side of the House have missed the point about this amendment. The amendment's actually saying that there's got to be a review that the monitoring officer would lead, and in that review they will explore carefully with a legal eye because of the problems that are raised around GDPR, Offenders Rehabilitation Act. I mean, it's all good political scoring and, you know, trying to make us look small, but the motion does say there's got to be a review, not by the politicians, but the officers, and hopefully it will be independent enough, and hopefully in this constitutional community we do have our friends on the other side sitting on those committees where they'll be also contributing to those decisions. And I think that's a proportionate way of addressing this matter, and I would urge my colleagues on this side of the House to support this amendment. It's the best way forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Namul Islam. We'll now move to the vote on amendment from the Councillor Islam. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Sorry. Was the question or was it he has questions, okay. So, was the questions to who?
Yeah, what was the question?
The monitoring officer, yes, yeah.
Yes. Yeah, no, it is. So your question, Councillor Garfield, was, is the amendment, is that a lawful position? Can that be done? Is that what oh, could you just confirm what you... Yes. Yes, thank you.
Apologies, colleagues. I thought the question was clear. I asked whether an individual local authority would have the power, in any circumstance, to add an additional barrier, be it a DBS check or anything else, before somebody was eligible to stand as a candidate for council, or if that power rested solely with central government and with MHCLG.
So in terms of the legal position, it's... The government has given guidance, and Simon Hoare, the previous minister for MHCLG, when it was that, gave guidance. There was a government review encouraging local authorities to take up the position of kind of encouraging members to have DBS checks. However, it isn't, if you're asking, is it a statutory position for all, can that be mandated before you can stand? Well, no, it's only in certain situations is the position on that. So what I'm saying is it's not a blanket statutory position, if that's what you're asking. Pardon?
Councillor Islam, okay. Would you like to intervene?
Yeah, it is a point of order. The amendment actually instructs the officers to review this matter, so I think you can go away and come back with the answer on that review.
Yeah, well, if I could come back with chapter and verse on your question, then I'll do it in that way. Thank you.
Is that okay, Councillor Joshua Gatfield? So, I'm sorry for the confusion. Let's move on. Oh, thank you. Now, as we agreed that we'll come back with your response next day. Thank you for that, and thank you. We'll now move to the vote on the amendment from the Councillor Islam. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Thank you. All those against, please raise your hands. Thank you. Any abstentions? Thank you. Of course, that will be minuted. Of course. Thank you. We now move to the debate on the motion as amended. You have up to 3 minutes each on the amendment motion. So, Councillor Danny Killing.
I'm going to sound like a cabinet member now. This sounds so statement-y. This council takes safeguarding very seriously. It is an item that comes to adult health and social care scrutiny on many occasions, with questions usually going to our Director of Quality Assurance and Safeguarding, Claire Solly, and Jason Strelitz, our Director of Public Health. In addition to this, we have an independently chaired Newham Safeguarding Adults Board. The Health and Adult Social Care will at future meetings receive a new report from the Safeguarding Adults Board to hear further updates from the independent chair, Sola Afwapi. As opposition, it is also my job to give credit where credit is due, and I commend the work of our safeguarding team And I wish to highlight the positive statistic from a previous safeguarding report that showed 99% of Section 42 inquiries in the borough involved advocacy support for adults lacking mental capacity compared to the regional average of 86%. I really want to acknowledge the achievement and extend thanks to colleagues on behalf of the borough. It is our job as councillors, however, to assist and support our residents. We are corporate parents to the children of the borough and a port of safety to those who are vulnerable. A simple DBS check would ensure an extra layer of safety for our more vulnerable residents. I am, however, questioning the resolutions to this motion now it has been amended, such as if somebody didn't pass a check, who would find out? Is this public information? What stops them from still being in contact with those at risk? However, I do believe our residents we serve, elected by them, have the right to safety, and in doing so, I will certainly be voting in favour of this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Denny Killing. Are there any other members who wish to speak? Councillor Young Person.
Thank you, Chair, and really welcome the debate and think that this motion as amended should be supported. I think of course safeguarding is important. It's paramount to what we do as councillors. And of course, we are engaging with vulnerable residents all the time. I had a DBS check for a very long time. I was a youth worker for a very long time. My current role doesn't require me to have a DBS check. So I've got one, but it's a number of years old. But because of the working environment I'm in, it's not a requirement, even though I will sometimes be meeting with vulnerable people. I welcome the principle of DBS checks, but we should recognise them for what they are. They are a snapshot of a point in time. They are a check at a point in time. And seen in isolation, they will only tell us certain things. So what do they tell us? If they tell us that someone has a criminal record from some misspent time in their youth for a minor infraction, do we really believe that that should prevent people from contributing to public life? When we look at the motion, it considers DBS checks, and that feels like a very narrow focus to me, because there are other standards that we're held to as councillors, and that it's really important that we do. I've heard no reference during this debate so far to the Nolan principles, sometimes called the 7 principles of public life. Those of selflessness, integrity, objectivity, accountability, openness, honesty, and leadership. We should be holding ourselves and each other to several different standards. Safeguarding is one of them. It's crucial, of course it's crucial, but it is not the only one, and it is one where we should be holding ourselves to higher and different standards. I could go into some of the practicalities around the motion and the question of timing. Ultimately, it is voters who decide who their representatives are. So the question about should councillors become DBS checked, I would question whether that also means should prospective candidates be DBS checked. And I'm not sure that colleagues have thought that through. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Young. Councillor Neil Wilson.
I think it's important that on the supplementary agenda that we follow what's actually written on the page, because motions sometimes get added to even in the course of an evening. So the motion as amended now doesn't have any extra sub-clauses put on from the floor. It does say on page 20 that this council resolves. That means it's an intention to require enhanced DBS checks, as we've outlined, introduce a voluntary standard, but the next paragraph, which is often overlooked because people think, oh, we're just voting on some sort of exercise. This is not a student debating policy area. This is not some point scoring. I would have hoped we'd reach unanimity across all parties on this, because our amendment is meant to be helpful and in accordance with a whole load of other legislative frameworks, not least electoral law, but also the equalities principle, the Equal Rights Act, and people not being judged for past convictions. But the section does say the council further instructs, and we've had highlighted by all the speakers from our side here on the amendment, the monitoring officer to review a consideration of whether membership of the Standards Advisory Board, I didn't hear any of this mentioned, by the way, up to now, a report to be provided with recommendation to the appropriate council body for further consideration and oversight. Officers to review existing safeguarding training and engagement with the local government association. I think our amendment is both constructive and is the point around which, as my colleagues have said, this is not a dismissive denial of all the important issues raised around safeguarding, whatever context we're in. It is in accordance with good practice and the legal frameworks that exist in UK law. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Neil Wilson. Councillor Zulfikar Ali.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Zulfikar Ali, Cabinet Lead for Finance and Resources. Chair, quite rightly, as we all agree in this chamber here, that public trust is important to us all, and that is something that we ought to be upholding in terms of safeguarding and integrity. However, we must also strike the balance, and that is to say that we must apply these checks and balances appropriately and proportionately, and that is to be in line with the roles and responsibility that all of us hold. I'm sure most of us agree that not all councillors' roles are necessarily requiring DBS checks. As such, a blanket requirement for all councillors to have DBS checks, in my view, isn't necessary and not a cost-effective way of tackling this issue. However, it is important that we recognize the importance and the spirit of the motion, and the amendments rightly propose the DBS checks for councillors with statutory and safeguarding responsibilities ought to be undertaken. And this is particularly important when dealing with vulnerable children and adults. The proposed amendments also include a number of other excellent proposals which are aimed to ensure we continue to assess, review, and adopt best practice to ensure Newham leads the way. And no doubt, as amendments state, there will be further update reports to appropriate council bodies for further discussions, enhancements, and oversight. And Chair, I would like to say that the proposed amendments are indeed appropriate, proportionate, and reflect the needs in terms of safeguarding to maintain the highest standards of safety and integrity to assure our residents that they and their children are safe in our hands. With those words, Chair, I support the amendment. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Zulfikar Ali. Are there any other members who wish to speak? Thank you. Councillor Manani.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to make what is kind of a clarification in that I wholeheartedly support the amendment, given that the rule of law is important, including the Local Government Act, which already bars people who have committed certain offences, whether sex offences or serious violent crime, that hold custodial sentences of 3 months or more from standing for elected office in the first place. DBS checks, whilst relevant for what our amendment will say that you need for statutory services, are also not holistic indicators of somebody's character or behaviour. We think that there is more than just DBS checks that tie into somebody's suitability for elected office. And I think, like the Nolan principles that were already mentioned, I think those things are also highly important. But I do want to clarify for residents' sakes that people who come into elected office, DBS checks or not, will not be people, hopefully, who will put your safety at risk, and the law already exists to bar such individuals from being in elected office. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Manali. Councillor Islam, you have the right of the last reply. Do you wish to say anything further?
Chair, I believe we should go straight to the vote. Thank you for letting me have a reply. I waive. Is that okay, colleagues on the other side?
No. Thank you. We'll now move to the vote. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Thank you. All those against, please raise your hands. Thank you. Any abstention? 2 abstentions. Thank you. That is carried out. Now I call upon motion 2. I call upon Councillor Nate Higgins to propose your motion, which is outlined from the page 207 on the published agenda. Councillor Nate Higgins, you have up to 5 minutes.
Thanks, Chair. Councillor Nate Higgins, Stratford Olympic Park Ward and leader of the Green Group. I'm speaking to propose our Newham Greens motion in support of borough-wide landlord licensing, and we accept the Labour amendment to the motion. Tonight, Greens are asking this council to do something simple but vital, to support restoring borough-wide landlord licensing by bringing Stratford Olympic Park, my ward, and Royal Victoria back into the scheme. Let's be clear, Newham's licensing scheme is a success story. It's one of the most comprehensive in the country, and it's something this borough should be proud of. It's taken thousands of enforcement actions, delivered over 1,000 prosecutions, recovered millions in unpaid council tax. It has protected tenants. It has saved lives. Licensing is not just paperwork. It is tenant justice. It's a difference between a child growing up in a safe, warm home or one filled with damp and mold, between a landlord fixing a dangerous fault or ignoring it, between a tenant knowing their rights or being left at the mercy of exploitation. And yet, right now, not every renter in Newham is protected equally. Stratford Olympic Park and Royal Victoria were removed from the scheme, not because the housing is fine, not because the landlords are all good, but because of missing data. Yet these 2 wards have the largest proportion of private rented homes anywhere in Newham. In Stratford Olympic Park and Royal Victoria, private renting is the dominant tenure. So when licensing is removed here, the impact is massive. Thousands of renters without the protection their neighbours enjoy. Let's be clear, this wasn't a failure of need, it was a failure of political will. And since then, the reality on the ground has told a different story. Residents reporting overcrowding, disrepair, antisocial behaviour, rogue landlords, the same issues we see across the borough, just without the tools to respond. The Green Party will not accept a postcode lottery for tenant protections. We believe renters in every part of this borough deserve to feel safe and secure in their homes, and we will always stand up to rogue landlords who treat people's homes as profit-making machines and nothing more. We say clearly, housing is a human right, not a commodity. That's why we're bringing this motion, to restore equality, to restore ambition, to give this council the evidence it needs to extend protections to every private renter in Newham. Because now the only barrier is political choice. Since December, councils no longer need Secretary of State approval to introduce borough-wide licensing. That hurdle is gone. The power is in our hands. And if we choose not to act, we are choosing inequality. We are choosing to leave thousands of renters behind. We are choosing to let licensing quietly erode while rogue landlords breathe a sigh of relief. The Green Party will not stand for that. We won't stay silent while protections are watered down. We will not look the other way while some of our most vulnerable residents are left exposed. We know licensing is not a silver bullet. It won't reverse the damage caused by Right to Buy, a policy that has gutted our social housing stock and left thousands at the mercy of an unregulated private rented sector. It won't bring the rent controls we so desperately need, controls that would stop landlords charging sky-high rents and paying off their mortgages with our residents' wages. And solving these problems, ending Right to Buy, introducing rent controls, building the social housing we need, would take action from national government. Yet despite now being in power, Labour are failing to act, refusing to reverse the damage, refusing to stand up sufficiently to the landlord lobby. But here in Newham, we know licensing works. It protects people. It holds landlords to account. It gives good landlords a level playing field and bad landlords nowhere to hide. Let's take the first step back to borough-wide licensing. Let's put renters first. Let's pass this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nate Higgins. Is there any seconder for the motion, please? Councillor Danny Keeling. So we've got 26 minutes? No. 19. We've got 19 minutes to go through this. 19 minutes, 19. For the motion. So I'll remind the members to be quick as possible to finish our 19 minutes to conclude the meeting. Thank you, Councillor Danny Keeling.
To ensure proper protections for residents, we have a landlord licensing scheme in our borough. This is exempt in 2 wards, the ward that I represent, the Olympic Park, and Royal Victoria. It creates inequalities in the private rented sector and allows for bad practice by landlords. When you give private landlords loopholes and give them an inch, they will take a mile to save their own skin. We're here to put residents first, ensure safety, equality, and quality of housing for residents. When designating areas in the borough for selective licensing, it should not be the case that you do not get protections dependent on where you live in the borough. It also is the case of many of the properties in Stratford Olympic Park and Royal Victoria owned and managed by monopolies, buying up and assuring inflated prices of rent. Licences enforce the standards of living, such as facilities within the property and minimum bedroom sizes. It also protects from overcrowding, ensuring proper quality of living. We have those rules for compliance, to put residents first, ensuring they know that their home they live in is fit for purpose. It also ensures landlords can't overfill their properties just to make large amounts of profit, just because they can. Let's ensure we put the residents at the heart of what we do, ensuring quality of housing that residents can call home.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Danny Keeling. Now we move to the debate. Councillor Joshua Garfield. Sorry.
Given that the amendment was accepted as friendly, and we're now debating the motion as amended, which I believe the Labour group will be supporting, I wanted to pay tribute to the work of a former colleague of this chamber and of mine in the ward where Councillor Higgins and Councillor Keeling now represent form part of one of the largest wards in London, what was then Stratford and Newtown, and that is Councillor Nerissa Assay, because Councillor Nerissa Assay and I and Councillor Terry Paul fought for a very long time to ensure that the whole of Stratford was part of this scheme. This is a scheme that I remember being introduced by our then Labour Mayor, Robin Wales, who was the first Labour Mayor to devise and introduce a scheme of this nature that determined that every single person in our borough should have, at the very basic level, a decent home to live in. There's no more Labour value than that. And I would say, in a friendly manner, given that we'll be supporting the motion to further extend the landlord licensing scheme where possible and when possible, I would say that the solution to the housing crisis lies in only one instance, and that is to build more homes. And if we don't build more homes, which is exactly what the Labour government is attempting to do, to build quicker, to build easier, to build cheaper, then the market will never adjust to the point where homes are both affordable and amenable and of good enough quality for all of our neighbours. We all know that the externalities of renting in the private sector is always passed on to the tenant. This is an excellent scheme. All landlords have to sign up to it. We were the first borough in the country to make sure the homes were a decent standard, and if they weren't, landlords couldn't let their properties here. The first Labour council to do that. But we also know that with the state of the housing crisis, every pound of that fee is passed on to the tenant. And that will remain the case until housing supply in this city, and even in Newham, is high enough to meet that demand. And so I would encourage colleagues in their own parties to ensure that representatives, whether in Westminster or locally or neighbouring, are not attempting to block developments needlessly and delay and prevent the construction of the very homes the people you purport to speak for deserve to live in. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to inform the members we have received an amendment to this motion, which is the outline to the supplementary agenda. I call on Councillor John Gray to present your amendment. Sorry? All right. All right, that's fine. That's fine, then I'll take that, yes. I'll ask Councillor John Gray. Yeah, after John Gray, Councillor Ellen Griffith.
Yeah, Chair, Council, Councillor John Gray, West Ham Ward, welcoming the acceptance by our esteemed colleagues from the Green Party of our amendment. And again, this is a point to celebrate the this Labour Council, which was the first council in the country to introduce landlord licensing. And never forget, Council, this was in the teeth of really vicious opposition, not only from the coalition Tory government of the time, but also from various so-called landlord associations. I can remember at that time, as being a relatively new councillor, attending a consultation meeting and where it was attacked by landlord representatives as just a money-making machine that would destroy the private rental sector in Newham, and that was untrue. There were various legal threats, and we must remember this, made at the time, but we were able to defeat all those threats because we had the evidence. We had the evidence in buckets to prove that a minority of landlords were directly and indirectly not only treating their tenants dreadfully, but also allowing and causing antisocial behaviour. And there was this evidence that we had that protected us, and we were able to defeat these attacks. Now, despite, since then, yes, the Conservative governments did exercise their veto by the Secretary of State over the Olympic Park, E20 and Royal Victoria. And to make it clear, I've been a lifelong supporter, as a former tenants rep in a previous life, of having a national licensing system. However, when the new Labour government minister removed the Secretary of State veto, the existing law remains. So we have to prove, to the same standard as everything else, that this licensing is necessary. Personally, we're totally in favour of it, but we must provide the proof. And it is not a political choice. The law of the land is the law of the land. Either we provide the proof or we can't. If we go ahead on it, then we will be successfully challenged and judicially reviewed, and the whole system might be put into doubt. Look, I look forward to there to being a national licence for all landlords up and down the country. And the Labour government's promise of a new national landlord database is a welcome start. But let us look forward. Let us celebrate what's happened in the past. and work with the many good landlords.
Thank you, Councillor John Gray. Councillor Alan Griffith.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to add some more, Councillor Alan Griffiths, Canning Town South Ward, I'd like to add some more details from my experience. The first is that we have a profoundly dysfunctional housing market in Newham. We have high rents and high prices chasing each other up. The classic example I'd like to give was actually in Royal Victoria Ward, where a brand new end terrace house was bought for more than £1 million, and the owner promptly applied for a housing multiple occupation licence. And I'd also like to thank the Olympic Park councillors for praising this scheme, but I think there are some, and for accepting the amendment, but there were some serious problems with the reasons that we put the amendment in. Firstly, the difference between the first exclusion the Conservative ministers made during the coalition. They took out E20 addresses. They didn't take out the whole of Olympic Park Ward. It's the difference between a postcode lottery and a ward boundary lottery, really. And I'm quite confident of that because I have a note of my own of 22nd March 2021 of an address in Olympic Park Ward, which is an E15 address and a block legacy tower where a majority of the homes at that time were privately rented. Can't check whether that's true anymore because the government later took the whole ward out. A part of what is now Royal Victoria Ward was in my ward, Canning Town South, until the last election. A lot of those blocks on the north side of Royal Victoria Dock have not only the law, but have clauses in their leases against short-term lets, including Airbnb, but there were a lot of complaints about short-term lets, about Airbnb, despite those controls, and about one flat at the time of legacy, which had parties every week. Now, as it happens, I've been around a bit, and I know people who work for Airbnb, so I could get some of those things dealt with. But licensing would be better. And the final thing is I'd really like to back up Councillor Gray's point about being able to see off legal challenges. When antisocial behaviour orders first came in, this council was one of the ones that was subject to a challenge of one of our first antisocial behaviour orders. We won, we got our money back, but we didn't get back the staff time that had to be put into seeing it off. And so it's good to avoid finding yourselves in those kind of situations. The Secretary of State's approval is no longer required as of 23rd December, which is the Monday before Christmas. But the need to comply with the law is. And I'd like to point out the last bit that we added, which is Amar Verdi, the relevant cabinet member, has been on this ever since then, and he's been working closely with the staff.
Thank you, Councillor Alan Griffith.
And when we do go.
Thank you. Thank you. Now I would like to ask Councillor Nate Higgins last to reply. Do you wish to add anything further? Thank you. In that case, we'll move to the vote. All those in favour, please raise your hands. Thank you. All those against, please raise your hands. Thank you. Or any abstentions? No, in that case, the motion carried out. Thank you so much. Thank you. Now I declare the meeting has closed. Thank you everyone for attending and watching this meeting.